I was talking with a joint venture partner about a wonderful opportunity to connect with clients as well as position yourself as an expert in a marketplace that today's technology facilitates better than ever. And it's an amazing way to get in front of your clients as an authority. And I want to share it with you because technology makes this more possible than ever before. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this is also relevant to subscribers of Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. And the concept here is a regular monthly event that brings together individuals who have similar experiences and similar desires to discuss their challenges and offer practical solutions. Now, the format of such an event is usually a guest speaker or a an expert such as a trainer or a consultant who speaks on a particular topic, and then the audience can ask questions and there's a lot of engagement. Now, technology makes this easier than ever before. In fact, it makes it so easy that I can sit here in front of you and do a presentation and, spend 15 minutes sharing some key ideas and concepts that you can implement, and then it can be viewed around the world. But what this presentation doesn't have is social credibility. This presentation doesn't automatically position me as an expert because it's my word against the world. And in fact, I can share ideas and concepts in this presentation that if shared with an audience would guarantee that I gain clients from that particular audience. Yes, I understand you're sitting there on the other side, maybe on your couch watching this on YouTube. Maybe you've sat down with a notepad and you're busily taking notes in your notebook about this presentation because this is another gold mine nugget of experience. And I know none of that is actually true because it's a podcast. It's cheapened down to something you listen to in your free time on a phone. It's cheapened down into something that, it's casual. You can listen to 50 podcasts in a day. But if you had to get in your car and pay admission to sit down and have a meal with like-minded individuals with some kind of expert in the room who's going to be able to answer your questions, and they can give the same presentation, and because it's an engaging, interactive experience, the person who attends will get much more out of the event. So who is this for? If you're a subject matter expert, if you're a presenter, if you are looking at how influencers are able to reach large audiences, then this particular setup that's in my event marketing program is right for you and it's going to work great. But if you're a salesperson, you can use this as well. And I'll give you some examples of how I've used it. You can also use this by going to other people's events and speaking at their events. So it could be, for example, I have a recording where I spoke with procurement managers at a procurement association meeting. I did a 45-minute talk on building business relationships. It's in a room full of people. Now I had the camera on me, and I'm not sure if that's online, but I had the camera on me and I did the presentation and I walked around afterwards and answered questions. Now I don't have the questions recorded. Sometimes you record the questions and sometimes you don't. But I recorded the presentation originally so that I can critique my presentation. And I'm not really sure if this is online because it wasn't my best presentation. However, when I sat down with the people in the room, what did I have at the end of the day? First off, I had a recording of a presentation that was mirroring a how-to manual or instruction manual that I had put together for a client. So a client paid me to put together a program on how to get better results from their vendors. And so I was doing consulting for a company. I was doing consulting for procurement professionals. And we were talking about the business development and risk management elements of working with vendors in such a way to be more efficient in the office. So we're building out process and stuff. So I wrote this report for them and I got paid to write the report. And then I extracted from the report some key ideas and concepts that I shared at the meeting. It was a dinner meeting of this trade association, and maybe there's 15, 20 people in the room. I recorded the presentation. So now I had the manual and I had the actual presentation, and I was paid to be in the room. So I comped the people in the room a copy of the manual. So there was a kind of a brief down version of the manual, which was part of a training program. Again, I was paid to write the program. I extracted the program, was paid to present the extraction, and then as a free gift, I gave them a special report. Now, the concept of the special report is very similar to what we talk about in my new book, which is establish instant credibility, because speaking in front of 15 to 20 people in the room, sharing the best information you can, and then answering their specific questions sets up additional consulting opportunities. So now you may not be selling a product or service. Maybe you're establishing a local nonprofit that's going to serve a certain audience, and you want to reach decision makers for fundraising purposes or to support the mission. Maybe you have a high-end financial services, uh, what you do is financial services. And when you're recording these podcasts, you don't get the audience feel and the emotions that come with having people in the room and looking around the room and connecting with folks and answering their questions in the room. And so you can stage these events. And I say staged because there is a little bit of logistics and choreography, but what I've done in the past is recorded all my presentations when I'm getting paid to speak, but also I would have 5 or 10 prospective customers in the room, 5 or 10 existing customers in the room when I was selling products and services, and I would bring in a guest speaker. The reason I brought in the guest speaker, I would do a 15 minutes up front. I'd have my guest speaker for 45 minutes, and then we'd have this big Q&A and this discussion back and forth, is because this is what's called a mastermind concept, which allows the people in the room to answer each other's questions and solve problems in the room. And so they get the value of the food, they get the value of the presentation, and they get the value of the interaction, and it becomes part of their social routine. Now, podcasting is great. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy sitting down and doing a podcast. I'm using a outline from a email message I sent earlier to a client, and I'm sharing useful information to you, but it's a different experience for your prospective clients if they have to drive across town, sit down in a meeting, and do something. Now, again, you can't just do it off the cuff. You can't do it off the cuff. You've got to really deliver them value. And of course, you can do this by going to a great restaurant and offering an admission that is less than what they'd have to pay for. Now, many times I would actually pay for the meals of my clients. But when we're doing the procurement association, I think it was $25 a person. When we did the business networking group, or we did this with SCORE, which is a nonprofit organization, we only charged a very nominal fee. It was paid for by grant money and sponsors. So here's the key, though. When we did this for SCORE, which is a nonprofit organization that helps small business owners, we had small business owners in the room. So the reason we charge an admission is because we don't want anybody in the room. We want the specific target audience in the room. Having the specific target audience in the room, and now adding technology, which means to videotape this. And we didn't videotape all the presentations at the SCORE event, but we had 40 people in the room for the SCORE event. We had prospective SCORE clients. We had the Chamber of Commerce. We had some local businesses that we invited. And then ultimately at the end of that presentation, we had built credibility for SCORE, but we also picked up a number of SCORE clients. So we grew that way. When I would do this kind of event and talk about marketing strategies for small businesses, I actually partnered with other speakers who had expertise in these areas. And we would one night talk about social media, and the next night we talk about direct mail. Another night we talk about internet marketing in general. And then sometimes we talk about internet marketing specifically. And I have recordings of many of these events. One such event, we did a 3-speaker conference, had 75 people in the room, and then we had a little booth off to the side where people could share testimonials in between each speaker. And so they'd go over there on camera and talk about how awesome Justin was and how he gave all these new ideas and concepts. And I'm so happy I've learned something. Again, you have to prepare for these presentations, which you should be preparing for your podcast as well. But because the people came across town and they all got in a room together, deals will happen between people in the room. Individuals will be happy because they got some good food. You're not going to go cheap on the food. You got to give them good food. They must be comparing what they paid with what they would get at a restaurant. And they're going to say, well, I could go to a restaurant and pay $25 or $50 for dinner, or I could go listen to a speaker and network with my friends and connect with people for $50, and I get something out of it. Now, a lot of times we'd have gifts or different things. In the modern times, you could actually get them on an email list and then let them get recordings of previous events through a special either membership site or unlisted videos on YouTube. But the key of what we're doing here is establishing credibility with a specific target audience. We're also doing market research. Now remember, you're not going to just yammer on all night and not let them eat their food. You're going to have some networking as the event opens up. You're going to have a speaker with, there'll be some appetizers. There'll be a speaker. And then when dinner comes, there'll be a lot of social talking. There could be a few announcements here and there. And then at the end, you're going to have those Q&A. You're going to have that question and answer. You have to have all parts of this. Now, why is it important? First off, they are paying 2 times the cost of the food and everything. So I want to get it out of the way that you're paying for food. You're not paying for food. They are paying to come there and receive a service. Your focus is to provide valuable service. So you need to have the conversations to find out what topics are going to be interesting to that audience. And then once you have the topics for that audience, you use the Q&A to understand at what level do they want to have this information. And then, of course, if you're a financial advisor, if you're a consultant, if you're a law firm, if you're an estate planner, if you're in any of these other areas, you will get clients out of this deal, and you'll ultimately have the value of the client on the back end. So this is really what they call self-liquidating lead generation, but it also tends to have value to your existing customers, to positioning you as an expert, and so on. Now, the technology part of this is to have somebody in who's recording you while you're doing your presentation. You may not record everybody's presentations. If you do, you may want to charge a speaker fee if you're going to provide them a raw master, or have them sign a waiver so that you can keep the rights to these presentations. And we can go into more details about the logistics and structures, but I just want you to understand that when you're doing this the right way, it does not cost you any money at all. It pays massive dividends. What it does cost you is the time and logistics necessary to set these up. So I've used an administrative assistant who sets these meetings up and gets out the invitations and makes sure we have enough people, and then makes arrangements with the people who are preparing the food. Sometimes it means that if you're at a restaurant, you got to pick from 3 dishes rather than just picking off the menu. And by the way, there are a lot of mistakes you can make. So if you want to avoid those mistakes and actually use this type of event marketing, you need to invest in the event marketing program that I have put together here. It may not be listed on the website, but you can always visit www.jwhco.com, go to the contact page, or check the catalog there to ask about the event marketing program. The key of what we're doing here is that we can start with a small room. We can start with 5 to 10 people. We can start with a specific venue. I've been as a guest to a business networking event at a factory. This was in Hampton Roads, and it was the guys who make the Reading. They make the trailer beds. And I was at the event. They were sponsoring it, and there was a talk, and there was networking. But again, it is a structured event a certain way to find customers. Now, you might see this happen with your local nonprofit or your local advocacy group that might have a monthly dinner for networking. You might see this as part of a fundraiser for a rescue squad. You might see this as part of your chamber of commerce or your local business networking group. This works very well when it's business to business. Now, you can have consumers in the room, but again, you need to charge admission so that you can weed out those people who aren't willing to put a little money in to pay attention. The thing about a podcast, the thing about YouTube, the thing about all these other what so-called free media that are very easy to produce content and throw it out there, is that the people watching the videos are not paying to be there. And because the people watching the videos have no skin in the game, they can just click to the next video. They're not going to listen to your full presentation. They're going to be skeptical because they can play armchair, expert. They're going to question everything you're doing. They're not coming to see an expert in the room. So if you're applying my Establish Instant Credibility book, and you're going to want to have other artifacts that demonstrate your expertise. Now, can you direct sell in the back of the room? Yes, you can. However, here's the caveat. What we did find is that these events are not discovery days. Okay. We're not pitching a big program. They're social networking in person, and we're building relationships, while today we're gathering authentic content that we can now syndicate in other channels. So there's people in a room, and you've got a camera looking at the speaker. The camera isn't way up front. The camera's in the back, so we can see the speaker and we can see the audience, or at least the back of their heads, at least some of the audience. And so we're establishing that that speaker is an expert. We're establishing that that speaker knows what they're talking about. We're establishing that people they had to jump through hoops to get there. Now, these videos are not presented to the general public necessarily. You can excerpt out of them to do podcasts or shorts, but you want people in the room who can be in the room. Now, if you have a large enough audience and your venue or numbers don't support having a lot of people in the room, you can simulcast or videocast. So I'm confident that in my area, my region of Hampton, I used to be in Hampton Roads, I would get videographers to support these activities. And I would get, I'd work with a certain venue and I'd get discounts and I'd set up these events. If you want to set up that type of event here in Henry County or Martinsville, Virginia, and it's agriculturally related, or it's related to emergency preparedness, success, it's related to those topics of homesteading, I'm actually working with a nonprofit that may be running a series of events and will be looking for quality speakers to come speak at these events. Now, again, I just explained all the valuable ways that you're going to benefit from speaking at an event like this if you're a guest speaker. You may or may not get paid. You may not get, you're definitely going to get a meal out of it, but you're not going to be, this is, I think I got paid $200 to be in a room for 90 minutes with people. I get $397 an hour, or sometimes 15-minute increments when we're doing consultations. I was in that room for what I gain outside the room and the follow-on value of being in a room and getting 20 names and getting to shake hands and getting to meet people. Now, I'm somebody with a lot of anxiety and I don't do really good in crowds, but again, I prepared for the presentation. I present it. And if you have the right topic in this region, I can either put you in front of a business networking group. I can put you in front of a nonprofit that talks about environmental tourism or ecotourism and agriculture. But there's probably groups in your area. There's probably some organization that has a regular monthly meeting who struggles to find a speaker that if you came and spoke and hired a videographer, okay, you have to get a little bit of permission there. There are releases that have to be signed and stuff like that. But if you hired a videographer and went negative to be in front of that audience, you're going to get high quality materials and everything that you need to use that to establish additional credibility. There's another factor involved is that you can get the audience to record and then get all the video back from them. That isn't always useful unless you've got plants in the audience who will actually do a decent recording. And then again, you don't have to have a television camera there. You don't have to call the local late night news station to come out and videotape the dinner meeting. You can actually just have a videographer who brings out the basic camera and make sure the lighting's good and make sure you're wired for sound properly and to make sure that everybody in the audience has a good experience. Now, the good news is that here in Martinsville, Henry County, I can refer you to videographers. I can refer you to studios that you can actually do this in a studio. A number of restaurants and country clubs that would allow you to rent a room and then get you a deal on the food. Again, they can't pick off the menu. You might have a buffet in the back. You might have, appetizers that only come in at a certain time. But the logistics of someone coming into the room and then you sharing your very best presentation, and we can even help you build that presentation, always gets you clients, not necessarily today, not necessarily the night of the event, because it's not about selling. It's about connecting like-minded individuals who all represent your customers and then ultimately bringing them into a repeat visit. After the fourth or fifth meeting, of course, they're paying to be there. As long as you're delivering value, and again, it could be the same content you'd put in a podcast. Those folks in the room will start sharing who you are. They're going to start referring people. They're going to be trained in such a way to understand that this is a place to get questions answered. And so they're going to wait to answer questions till they're in the room with you. And so you're going to get first strike on these folks when it comes to helping them solve problems as a services provider, as an insurance agent, as a lawyer, as a financial planner. And it's a very tasteful way to get to know your audience better. So if you have any questions about this particular type of event marketing, it really is a networking event, and it has a high social value because, again, people will pay attention to the whole presentation. Not like here on podcasts where 50% of the people dropped out after the first 30 seconds. You're going to get a huge amount of value out of this. So if this is something you're interested in doing, I do have a program on event marketing, and we've used that time and time again as a blueprint in order to help clients hold these events. And I've even done these events as luncheons for prospects. And I'd always make sure there are prospects in the room and there are customers in the room, because the customers and prospects talking to each other is where the magic happens. Not me standing up in the room and giving them a pitch. I need to give them valuable information, useful and relevant information. I need them to be able to leave the room and solve a problem. Same content that we're doing on a podcast, but because they paid to be there. And again, you can comp if the numbers are right, but the majority of the time, they're paying to be in the room. Even if it's a $5 tip they leave for the waitress on the table. It is an understanding that they're paying to be there, and because they're paying to be there, they're more likely to pay attention. They're more likely to get involved. They're more likely to join your programs. They're more likely to buy your products and services. I've done this for auto dealerships selling fleet vehicles to uh, companies. I've done this for internet marketing companies. I've done this for fleet oil and lube services companies. I've done this for landscaping companies. They're selling commercial. This works very well in a commercial environment because a lot of business people, they're there to network anyway. And if they can get a good meal out of it, they're not worried about, at 6 o'clock, stopping someplace, spending an hour listening to a presentation once a month or so, and then ultimately making a decision to purchase. This can become a regular thing that you're doing to build your business, to build word of mouth, to build recognition, to build authority, to build credibility. And if you're interested in learning more, I can cover it in additional podcast episodes. And then if you go through the library at www.insidestrategicrelations.com or at www.adbriefings.co.uk, you can, of course, find more event marketing insights and tips. And if you want to save some time, just ask a question. Somebody in the office here will point you to the right resources. I want to thank you for listening. And I want you to understand, though, if you want to get your audience involved, if you want to understand your buyers, if you want to level up your business, this approach of a regular mastermind or regular presentations in your community in front of target prospects who paid to be in the room, I don't know if FTC will let me say it, but it can guarantee business. It'll guarantee your tip of the tongue for what you do. And as an expert, as a subject matter, as a professional services provider, this is a consistent and easy way. And if it doesn't work for you, at least you got a decent meal. That's how they're going to feel. But ultimately, we make it work. Again, I would love to refer you to some of the resources in my local region because there are people here that get it. They understand how this works. And then, of course, I can show you how to find people in your own regions, venues, places, how to set up the meeting, how to promote the meeting. Do you give out brochures or materials? We can answer all those questions for you, either in another podcast or in a one-on-one consultation. Again, I hope I've given you something useful. Thank you for those individuals who stayed at the end of the presentation. But if you want everybody to stay at the end of the presentation, then we choose a different medium, we choose a different venue, and we get better results. Thanks for watching. See you next time.